me falling.
Hi, guys, and thank you for tuning in today. My name is Jordan, and I'm a trustee for the Music Works. I'm hosting today's session alongside Emily as part of the team supporting the Youth Advisory Group. Today, we will be discussing our journeys in music with a particular focus on the challenges we've faced along the way. Today, I have four guests. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves, starting with Grove?
Sorry, there we go. So my name is Grove. I'm a producer, vocalist, DJ, kind of making music within like dark, clubby, hip hop, sprinkles of pop realm. And I grew up in Cheltenham, but now I've been living in Bristol for the past year and a half. Yeah, just been wicked.
Yeah, I'm Hamish, senior music leader for the Music Works. Do a bit of graphic design, kind of currently living in Bristol, but doing a lot of work across Gloucestershire. And yeah, kind of got into music through going to sort of through mainstream education into university, and then it's kind of led to this point.
Hello, my name is Roella, and I am a multi-instrumentalist, composer, and performer from Gloucester. My main instrument is piano, but I play other instruments too. I studied music, well, from a variety of different places. I have a gospel background as well as a classical background. Studied it at school and also at conservatoires in London, and currently studying at a conservatoire in the US called Berklee College of Music.
Hi, I'm Eden. I play viola and I'm from Gloucester. I go to the RNCM and I'm a first year, and that's in Manchester.
Okay, and thank you guys for joining me today. So I have a couple questions for you guys, just to sort of explore your journeys into music and sort of what take backs you might have from that. And to start off, really, I just wanted to ask you guys to just tell me a bit about your career path into music.
Yeah, I'll kick that off. So my path into music started genuinely with the GarageBand app when I was 14 on my iPhone 3. Maybe it's a 3S. But so I just started playing around with all the different features on there with like the really, really MIDI sounding keyboards and that. But that did inspire me to then move on to teaching myself like guitar and piano, and getting involved in like community open mic spaces at like pubs, at Gloucester Guildhall, just like all these places, just trying to perform as much as I could. So I was doing that for a while, was in a flipping prog rock metal band from when I was 15. But I think a big switching point for me was after meeting Malachi, getting involved in like a load of getting really involved in community spaces, and through that learning like production, getting paired up with other artists to do songwriting, and essentially through that learned the kind of foundations of like collaboration, importance of skill sharing, relevant music knowledge that applied to the kind of music that I enjoyed and wanted to make. Because like I really wanted to do music in school, but I got rejected from doing GCSE from not having a high enough grade or qualification in anything, which felt like a huge setback at the time. But I really felt in the community spaces within the Music Works in Studio 340, there was like safety, understanding, and like space to experiment and get things wrong, because that's just like such a fundamental part of any creative process. A few years down the line, started an electronic duo called Bast, joined the Upsurge program with the Music Works, and then also started passing on the knowledge that I'd learnt, mentoring young people, co-facilitating workshops. And I felt really, really content in the stage, put on some really wicked nights in Cheltenham with JPDL, Grizzo, and other people like that. But yeah, then eventually a year and a half ago, moved to Bristol, applied all of this experience, knowledge, and experimental space to making tracks in Bristol, and it's been going really, really well since that point. It's me.
Wow, that's interesting, especially about not being able to have the qualification, to actually like move forward through schooling and stuff like that. That's really interesting to me. I mean, Hamish, what would you say to that question? Tell me a bit about your sort of path into music.
Yeah, sure. So mine slightly similar, but there are a couple of differences. So my first kind of access to music really was in secondary school, where I had an older brother who was into music, and he had a lot of friends that were musicians. So it kind of felt like once I went to secondary school, I was really going to find my place within music, because I sort of looked up to those guys, and he had a big circle of friends that were into it. However, when I joined, similar to Grove, there wasn't really anyone in my school that kind of either made the music that I was into, taught the music that I like listened to. So it was kind of it was just like me and this one friend sort of that would do stuff, but it really wasn't like, didn't fit necessarily in the curriculum box. So kind of had piano lessons, or like 6 months of keyboard lessons really early on, but ended up stopping that because I wasn't excited by it. I wanted to learn the instrument, but I wasn't excited by the lesson process. So stopped that for a couple of years and only picked it up I think it was doing BTEC, sort of BTEC GCSE and BTEC A-level equivalent. And that was really when I sort of found my lane somewhat, and was super passionate because I got to do projects that I was into, and it was sort of I was really supported in doing the things that I wanted to do. Then kind of went on to university to study popular music at Uni of Glos, where there I met some really good friends. We started our own project, a band called Watercolors, which then we went on to play some shows, do tours and whatnot. And during university, that's when I was introduced to community music and Music Works. So similar to Grove, the band that I was in went on the Upsurge program, because Music Works could see what we were doing and wanted to support us, and we were really keen to kind of branch out of the uni bubble, in the sense of like, it was great that we were doing all of this stuff, but it was really important to us to get to know the local scene and what's happening locally, and who's in the venues, who are the engineers, what's happening in the festivals and whatnot. And we were super supported in doing that. And then through that, I was just kind of went back to Bristol, did some promotion work and venues across Bristol, meanwhile doing the Music Work stuff at the same time. And then that kind of naturally progressed onto a full-time position as a music leader, which was a job I had no idea even existed until I was about 20, 21, which is, super surprising. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like a lot of collaboration.
I think we've lost Jordan.
Sort of evolved that uni bubble is something that I've personally. Oh. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. But so talking about escaping that uni bubble is something I've tried to do as well, sort of like getting out, and Music Works has been great for that, in that sense. So Rowella, could you tell me a little bit about your career path into music?
Okay, so when do I start? Okay, I'm gonna start with Gloucester and then London and then the US. But when I was in Gloucester, I was really, just trying to get hold of as many musical experiences as I possibly could. So as far as bands were concerned, I pretty much joined everything that Gloucester Music had to offer. Growing up, I did the Gloucester Youth Jazz Orchestra, Gloucester Youth Wind Orchestra, and composed some pieces for the youth orchestra as well, which were all just incredible experiences, really. It was really interesting in terms of the demographic when I was in those bands. Is that whenever it came to reading and to charts and to big ensemble work, there weren't a lot of BAME people, or there wasn't a lot of black representation. So a lot of the time I was the only one. And to be honest, what got me through that was just how much I love music, and kind of turn the blinders on to focus on the musical experience that I'm gaining. But it definitely was something that it would stick out naturally. But yeah, it's still like some of the music tours that we did with those different groups were like some of the best experiences of my life, and I felt really, really blessed to have done them. And then, as like how London happened was actually, I found out that you could study music practically if you go to a conservatoire through some friends who were in a year above me, who actually went on to go to Birmingham Conservatoire. And I was like, huh? You could literally go to university and like actually study like just playing music, like practically playing music, because like a lot of the uni courses that were being offered by my secondary school, which was Ribston Hall, was where you go and you study music. There's like the history of music and like the analytical side of it, and not necessarily like the doing part, which was the part that I was the most interested in. So yeah, it was kind of a bit of a fluke that I found out about QCAS versus UCAS. But yes, so kind of embarked on that process of applying to QCAS by myself, and with the help of one of my band mentors, Pete Martin, who runs Dulce Youth Jazz Orchestra, and then auditioned for Trinity Guildhall, and ended up going to Trinity for 2 years, studying jazz. So I should mention that. What am I doing? What music is my favorite? Yeah. So went to Trinity, studied jazz on their course. When I got there, I was super, super excited again. I was like, oh my days, I'm going to be actually like studying music like in London, where it's like a lot more like ethnically diverse. There's going to be so many, like, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be hard. Like, there's going to be so many, it's going to be so different to, to being in Gloucester. And then when I got there, like something, I knew that something didn't quite fit for me. Because it's kind of more of the same, in the sense that, again, I was like, I was definitely the only black girl in my year. I think there were 16 of us in total, and with about maybe 3 black guys. And by second year, by the first year, 3 of the 4 black people in my year were gone. And by the second year, like I had transferred. We're getting there. But yeah, like what was really interesting about that experience was just like I was going to study jazz, and then something just didn't quite click right with how it was being taught in the conservatoire. Like it was from a very kind of like I don't know, it's just from a very like classical point of view, which isn't quite how you can break jazz down. And yeah, it's like even though I would never say that like I know how it's supposed to be and they were doing it wrong. It's just something just didn't quite sit with me. And then around like my first year of Trinity came to a close, I got the opportunity to do a summer course at Berklee College of Music that was led by Terry Lynn Carrington. That summer course was absolutely insane. At the end of it, I auditioned for actually study. I was like, why not? Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens if I just audition for the actual school. I auditioned, and at the end of the 5-week concert, I found out that I'd been awarded a full tuition scholarship to go and actually join the school in the US, which was insane. I thought I was all set, and then found out that in order to take up that place, I had to like prove that I had $29,000, and I was like, 29,000 what? Like I get so excited when I just about make £100 for my birthday from relatives. So like 29,000 was like what? And to cut that like fundraising story short, we ended up raising that 29,000, or like it was like £23,000 in equivalent in 4 months to be able to get out there. We did that through a mixture of I did a lot of gigging in that time, because when I came back, I formed a band in London, which called the Quintet, and we would gig a lot in loads of different places. And I didn't quite realize what was happening like as I was doing that. It's kind of just a process of like, okay, write some music, perform it, get it recorded, give it to promoters, and then kind of move on to the next gig. And just kind of like grow and grow in that. But I didn't realize that actually in doing that, like I was kind of like setting some really substantial roots in the UK jazz scene. And it's been quite amazing because I've been able to do that, kind of be a little bit established in the scene here. So so much more to do. But it was amazing to be able to do that as part of the fundraising process, to keep going and to keep pursuing the opportunity I've been given. And I think that's a bit. I think that's like a little bit of it. Get more into like the musical side of stuff in later questions, but there we go.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I mean, it sounds like you've been a bit of a wild ride. So it's very interesting. Eden, I'd love to hear about your career path into music. If you could, let's in on that.
Yeah. So it all started really when I was really young. I don't really know what age, but I was like toddler kind of period. And I think my family were sitting having a coffee in Stroud, and there was a string quartet playing on the street. And I don't remember this, but my mum said I was just like drawn to it, and she couldn't really take me away from it. And I think I was particularly interested in the cello. So that's unfortunate that I didn't end up playing the cello. I play viola now. But I loved it. And later on in primary school, I think my mum got me a violin, and I started lessons there. I really enjoyed it, but it was very weird in an inner city primary school. And it was like a violin class. So we'd all have our violins, and it was like 4 of us, and we'd play in a class together, like Frere Jacques and stuff. And at that point, I didn't know that I'd be here. And I think for quite a while, I didn't really realize I wanted to do music. I always loved it, and it was where I saw my friends and stuff. I would go, and on the weekends, I'd go to the Five Valleys Music Centre in Stroud and play with some friends there. And we'd mess about a bit in the choir and sing some lyrics and exchange some of the words for relatively rude ones. Rude for like an 11-year-old, that is. But I think I really realised I wanted to do music when I was kind of taken away from it. So in GCSE kind of time, I got a tumour in my jaw, and that meant I had to miss a bunch of my GCSEs, and all of my GCSEs, which was kind of, that sucked a lot. And then the same thing happened in year 12, which meant I had to resit a year. And through all of that time out from school and friends and stuff, I was listening to music all of the time. I was kind of keeping me going a bit, and I enjoyed it and I loved it, and I listened to it before going into surgery and stuff. And I really missed playing my viola at that point. And I missed playing with my friends and playing in groups. And I came back to it, and although doctors were like, oh, you can't play too much because it was in my jaw on my playing side, and they were like, oh, you can't really do it too much, you should stagger yourself in. I kind of was a bit naughty and did probably too much. And I knew that I wanted to do that in the future, and I dedicated myself to that in sixth form. And through this time, GAM really helped me with bursaries and stuff, because at that point I was being funded by my single mother, and I got lessons and stuff that I probably wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise. And I could really live my dream out on what I was passionate about. And yeah, I'm really thankful for that. And I got into a good orchestra, the CBSO Youth Orchestra, and that's absolutely phenomenal, with like professional conductors and stuff. I don't know if you can hear the police outside. Manchester being the busy city it is. Yeah, and through these lessons and through my teacher, Laura Galetta, it really inspired me to get where I am. And I worked so hard after not being able to practice for like a year. I'm lucky to be where I am, to be honest, because there's been quite a lot of setbacks along the way.
Okay, cool. Well, that sounds like we've all sort of been on a bit of a wild ride then, by judging by these stories. And there's one thing that sort of like I can see between all of them is that they're very, I think there's a term used like squiggly careers, and it's about how you kind of end up going, like your path ends up being kind of like that. Thanks for sharing that, guys. I actually wanted to get onto, because I know, I actually wanted to get onto this question here. So, specifically, starting with you again, Grove, can you tell me about your first experience with first access with music? For example, like in schools or, in primary school, some people's first experience with music there, sometimes it's at home. If you could just tell me a bit about that, that'd be cool.
For sure. So I think my first access to making music with other people, before it was a very insular thing, but my first experience with making people-based music creation was through the Music Works. But more specifically, I responded to a call out that Malachi put out on like a Facebook page. I sent it through this open mic that I've been to. And then we organised to meet up after that. And he introduced me into the Music Works as an organisation, paired me up with a vocalist and guitarist called Greg to work on songwriting. I showed him these GarageBand demos that I've been working on, and he signposted me to production workshops that were happening in the studio. I'd even gave like a studio laptop to help me hone my production skills with, which honestly is like the foundations of so much that I know now. So just had a great like hands-on insight into how the real world of like music making and production and recording all works. And I think as well, it's put me on a very good standing within people in my peer group who also do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. It sounds like you really had like a practical first step,
Fully practical.
Yeah, which is really important, I guess, and we don't see too much of in certain areas. So yeah, that's really good to hear that. So Hamish, could you tell me a bit about your first access with music?
Yeah, I think if I go like way, way, way back, obviously like secondary school was kind of the first time you probably take interest, or I took interest, but like I definitely was potentially offered something like harmonica or flute lessons or something in primary school that was, it was kind of interesting, but it wasn't necessarily something I was super passionate about at the time. But in terms of, kind of experience with first access, again, it was sort of, mainly in secondary school, but I sort of didn't really get into it until the later years into secondary school, when I was given a lot more kind of practical flexibility in terms of the work that I wanted to do. I did all BTECs across the board, which I found was super, super useful. And I definitely have friends that I know did A-level and had slightly different experiences, and were kind of, there was a lot of things that I got taught in BTEC that, such as music tech, using how to use live equipment, mixing desks, sort of some real fundamental skills that I've used later in life. In terms of other first access, I think for me, like my teachers were quite supportive. Two in particular. One, my music tech teacher, that kind of showed me the options beyond. I think my knowledge to music as a career path was quite limited to begin with. I sort of thought, okay, if I was to go into music, my options are kind of be an artist, be a performer, or be a teacher. And that was kind of the extent of what I knew up until about 18, 19, 20 years old. And my music tech teacher sort of showed me different avenues and whatnot. I also had a maths teacher that was a big part in. She was my tutor, so there would be oftentimes, especially during sixth form, where I wasn't particularly engaging with my other A levels like maths and physics. And as my maths teacher, she wasn't too pleased that I was missing the odd maths lesson to stay in the music block. However, as my tutor and as my mentor, at the same time, she could see the spark and how passionate I was about what I was into, and then fully would kind of not that I condone the behavior, but occasionally she might turn a blind eye and she would support me in that aspect, which was super, super vital. And then years on, she's since been to gigs of mine and stuff, so it's kind of been really full circle. So I think that was sort of my initial first access and kind of those really important figures.
Okay, cool. So that's quite interesting about, I think everyone has similar experiences in school, with the recorder, especially with like recorders and things like that. Ro, could you, sort of tell us about what that was like for you?
It's like my first ever hands-on experience of music actually was inside my home on the piano that we had. My nan had bought it for the family when she just moved to England, and she'd always wanted to play piano, but never really got the time because she was like working 3 jobs to provide for the kids. And then my mum and her sister, they kind of dabbled in it, but they never really, they never really wanted to take it all the way. But my mum stayed living with my nan, so like I had this piano that I grew up around. I remember it's actually crazy, but I do remember the day when I just went up to it, and I was just done with just banging around and just crashing and making no like actual noise and not knowing what was going on. And I was like, Mum, can I have piano lessons? And that was like where the whole journey started. Like my mum taught me like a few things, like what she'd learned, because she actually did piano up to grade 4. And then I went to a classical piano teacher, and started doing ABRSM grades, starting with prep test, round about, I think it was like maybe like 5, 6. I still got like the little certificates of like all the notes that the examiners write out. I remember like the first exam I ever went to, like the grand piano was like so much bigger than me, and I was like this tiny dot playing this tiny little piece. But yeah, it was a really special thing. So that was kind of my first like formal introduction. And then as well, I mentioned earlier that I grew up in the gospel church. I grew up going to church when I was younger, and that's a huge part of my music training. That is where I learned to play by ear. It's where I learned chords. My first kind of like exposure to extensions and everything was in the church. None of it was written out. It was literally all ear work, and the number system, which later when we actually got to say studying music in secondary school, actually really helped, because when they were referring to the Roman numerals in terms of analyzing music, I was like, oh yeah, it's just a number system. But like my godfather used to call out to me whilst he was playing bass and be like, okay, we're going to 4, okay, we're going to 2, we're going to 5, and be like, back to 1, be like, okay, now we're going up 2 steps, and the 2 steps would be like going up, what would it be? 2 steps would be going up a tone, and then going up 1 is going up a semitone. So sometimes you get those 1 singers who'd be like, okay, want to go up, next chorus, want to go up again, 5, what? Okay, we want to go up again, and you just got to be ready to go. But it was like really great training.
Sounds like you had a really great beginning into music, Roella. But I'm going to move you on so we fit everyone in. Can we move on to Eden, please?
Hi. Yeah, as I said, the quartet thing was quite major, and I think it's what made my mum realise that I wanted to do music and that I was a fairly musical child, and that I loved it, really. I had a similar experience with the recorder thing, but that was somewhat traumatizing for me. I was not good at it. I got really bored and messed around quite a bit, I think.
Eden, could you expand on that and talk about, was this in a class, a whole class recorder?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's 30 primary school kids all playing recorder at the same time. I was a very energetic child, and I could not sit there and play this instrument, and I would always overblow and not really understand what was happening because it would make this horrendous noise. And then the horrendous noise set me back, and it didn't. I didn't want to try again because it was horrible. And then, like, the teacher would get annoyed, like, Eden, stop messing around. I was like, ah. But yeah, the violin class in school is where I started, I think, and I didn't really recognize myself as a musician until secondary school. I think, like, I agree with Hamish on that. Like, I had music in my life before, and I liked listening to music all the time, and I played a bit of violin. But when I got into secondary school, I realized, like, when I started seeing that there was different groups and different social areas and stuff, and that started to happen, I had to choose between being like a musical kid or another type of kid, like a sporty kid or something. And I think I found myself as a musician there, and things just happened to grow. I made several choices. Like, I could choose between playing rugby games on the weekend or going to my music course in Stroud. And I thought, well, I prefer doing the music stuff, so I go there. And it's like all these small choices between music and something else that led me there eventually, I think.
Okay, cool. So, so we have one more question for you guys. And I think, to be honest, this is probably the most important for me, one of the most important for me here today as well. I just want you guys to, just because we are running out of time really. So for this next question, if you guys could just, sort of try and be as concise as you can. That would be cool. So what would you say needs to be changed in music education to support young people? And for this one, I'll start with Ro.
I would say that in education, you need to take more into account like the music genres that children are into and that they're listening to today. So like offering like a broader scope of stuff. So for example, instead of like just offering say classical music, also looking into the music tech side from an earlier age, and into analyzing pop artists or soul or funk artists from an earlier age as well. I'm just asking the children what interests them and being like, okay, can we build a course around what people are currently listening to today?
Okay.
Cool. Should I jump in there? I'm happy to jump in on that. Yeah, just to elaborate what Ro was saying, as someone that is now kind of leading workshops in different education settings, from SEN to APS to mainstream to community stuff, I think one of the most important things is young people being provided exposure to relevant opportunities, opposed to sort of curriculum-based opportunities that they don't particularly relate to. I'm trying to think what else I've got, because I've got a couple on this. Yeah, again, I was never educated on that many creative roles beyond kind of music teaching and music as being a performer, and that was kind of the extent of my knowledge. Whereas, later down the line, I sort of learned how many other opportunities there were, and also I think as educators, you don't necessarily need to understand where the culture is, but you need to appreciate it and accept it and kind of be willing. Often I'll go into a session and I'll learn from the pupil. I will kind of which throws them somewhat when it's kind of like, what's the music session going to be about? And they lead it. And if it's me, getting a YouTube instrumental so that they can spit some bars on top of, that's totally cool, because that's the thing which they're super passionate about doing. And I think if I was to try and force my perspective or what I like doing on them, potentially it might be the thing which turns them away. So yeah, letting the young people take the lead, really, finding what excites them and just like facilitating that journey, really, and just really super practical at the end of the day. Like, music is super creative, and I think had I spent too much time bogged down in the academia, I might not still be doing it. It was kind of, so just doing as much as possible is really important, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of those points wholeheartedly. And also, I think it's important to bring in an element of like music not being like a goal-based thing. It doesn't, you don't have to get a qualification, or you don't have to reach this kind of level from it. Like for me personally, I was like very emotionally stunted from just being in like tough situations when I was younger. And the reason in which I fell in love with music is because I truly actually got to like express myself emotionally. And I think that should always be the roots from which any kind of creative thing should grow from like from a sense of emotional expression. And I think that should be focused on, and people shouldn't feel like, oh, I'm not going to do this because I'm not good enough at it. It's like, no, you do it because you enjoy doing it. Yeah, I think that just to focus on that's great.
Yeah, I guess from a classical music side, because that's my main background, my main thing, what needs to be changed is, I think a lot of organizations and like in school and stuff, people look for how good you are at the time, which has a huge bias towards the people who've been playing since they're like 2, and their parents have always been able to afford lessons, and they've always been playing the instrument, and they've kind of been forced to do it. But what they should be looking for is for potential and for love, because you're giving places in colleges and in orchestras and stuff to people who don't love it, where you could be giving it to someone who really does love it but hasn't had the opportunity so far and could make a huge thing out of it. I see people at college who don't really want to be here, but they're here because they happen to be good enough, because they've been doing it forever, and because they want to have a uni experience. And that's so unfair to the people who could like really love their place here, Yeah, I'm quite passionate about that, and it kind of annoys me because even some of my friends feel like that, and that's upsetting. But it is how it is at the moment, and I wish it would be different.
That's excellent. Fantastic answers to everything. Before we let you all go, we have actually got a question from somebody viewing. Do you think it's imperative to study music in an academic facility in order to progress as a musician? Lots of musicians in the past have had very basic jobs or different academic study. Would anyone like to take that question?
I think, it's not necessarily important to study within an academic facility, but I do think it's important to be able to experience music as part of a community. And I think that's what's so often denied to people, because these people who, have been working basic jobs and then, still manage to succeed really, really well within music. It's just imagining the potential of that person if they'd maybe been part of like a music community from a young age and have learned the skills through that.
Just to add to what Grove was saying, for me, the community side of things was really the turning point when it was kind of, I was exposed to all of those different opportunities, and that really kind of, working with the Music Works was really sort of important in terms of like the development for me going into kind of setting me up into a creative career. And I don't think specifically just doing education, sometimes I think you can get music teachers that they've never left education. So it's kind of like, what experience are you bringing to a young person, not only from a inspirational point of or a mentoring point of view, but just what kind of life experiences are there, and just being provided opportunities to make music in and out of mainstream is really important.
Okay, I'll add to that. I don't think it's absolutely like it is the only way you can do things at all. But I think lots of people don't have access to it and they're severely stunted by it. And that shouldn't be the way things are. And I think that if I didn't have the education and like the opportunities to be where I am now, I probably wouldn't make it as a musician, which is sad. I think, but if there was like an apprenticeship or something for what I wanted to do in the future, I would absolutely just go for that. And I think something like that would be absolutely incredible if it actually existed. Like, I don't think I would need to go through 4 years paying $9,000 a year for just like viola lessons and groups that I'm not even going to at the moment, you know. But it is how it is at the moment, and it's sad.
Also, just to add finally, one thing we all mentioned in previous conversations that I'm aware that we didn't discuss today was YouTube and learning stuff on YouTube and how vital that was outside of the class. That we've all spent so long just watching YouTube tutorials about like how to play piano and how to play keyboard and how to learn Logic Pro and all these like online resources that just are absolutely vital in terms of like how definitely how I got to where I am now. And I know a lot of the guys will agree. I think sometimes YouTube can be considered an uncredible resource in terms of the mainstream, when actually, you know, there's such a wealth of information on there that, you know, is super important to just dive in and get stuck in.
Before I let Jordan wrap up, I've got another question. We'd like to know how we can listen to the music that you're all making. So for anybody listening to us today, where can they hear your music?
Can you hear me on Spotify? My name is Grove, G to the R to the OVE, a little fire in your speaker, a little vibes energy. I released an EP about a few weeks ago, so it would be wicked if you wanted to check it out.
Right.
Also going to jump in and say that you can find me on YouTube. Literally just search my name, Rowella Oloro, ROELLAOLLORO. I should be the first person that comes up. There ain't many Rowellas for some weird reason. Thing, name your kids Rowella, it's a cool name. Yes, but if you head over to YouTube. Darn, sound like a YouTuber. This is hilarious. Woo.
I've got a couple bits, but nothing like super recent. But there is stuff out on the internet. So mine would be the band Watercolors, and then there's a few different bits and bobs on the Music Works YouTube channel, just like collaborations we've done over lockdown and stuff with young people.
I wish I created more, to be honest. But I'm mostly learning at this point. So I guess you could find where I create music on RNCM social medias. So that's the Royal Northern College of Music and CBSO Youth Orchestra concerts in Birmingham when they start up again. They are absolutely phenomenal and we get amazing reviews every time. It's just amazing when a bunch of like 100 or more young people are all playing in an orchestra together. Is amazing.
Okay, thank you guys. Thanks so much for your time today. There's been some real gems in what you guys have been saying, and I hope that everyone's found this conversation useful. I'd also like to thank Emily for helping me co-host this, and Lee as well behind the scenes, making things work. I'd like to just remind everyone to keep an eye on the Music Works social media, to keep an eye on the other events of the conference. And thank you guys for watching, and catch you guys soon.
Hey.